Welcome to Warfighters United, where veterans' voices are heard and transitional resources provided. This podcast is brought to you by the Veterans of Foreign Wars, a service organization that provides veterans the resources and representation to all American warfighters throughout the nation. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. John Sofronas, a Navy Corpsman augmented to the United States Marine Corps. He served from 1999 to 2008 in direct support from Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. His service includes, but not limited to, Fallujah, Iraq, Africa, amongst other areas of operation. He was injured in 2006, developed thyroid cancer shortly after his return. He sustained subsequent stroke, multiple TBIs, and transitioned to working for the Department of Veterans Affairs as a rating specialist and a decision review officer. He's on here today to provide clarity for multiple issues for all veterans, family members, and beneficiaries. And a little bit about his service. He sustained multiple IEDs, 9, 3 RPGs, had a couple grenades thrown into his vehicle at one point in time. And that's why he's still here to help our vets. John, welcome to Warfighters United. How you doing today?
Brother, Eric, it's an honor, man. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, so I want to get into a little bit about your service. You know, you've done multiple tours. You served with the Raiders. You served with 2-8, I believe, correct? Or is it 2-2?
Yeah. So 2-8, I had my start with 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, right out of Corps School. And my chief was, 7'2". He said, go here. And I did. And that's kind of the par for the course with Chief Lucky. Yeah. Since from then on, I had been with a variety of other units, but had my start in 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Went through the pipeline. We deployed in 2001 on 24th MUSOC. And from there, 02, Horn of Africa, Camp Lemonnier. I wore Marine Corps camis very proudly. If my Marines were walking, I was walking. I learned that very early on, too. And what a blood stripe was. There's no greater bond than that of a corpsman and a Marine. And so I learned that early, and that bond still stays with me today. In 03, elements of 2-8 went to Nasiriyah. I was there for a bit. I ended up going with headquarters at one point, state platoon 1 point, getting kind of shifted around to the bastard troop. In 04, Fallujah for a bit. 05, Battle Griffin in Norway. Never again. And then 06, Fallujah, where you referenced to some of the injuries that I sustained. That was the one that really rocked me, bro.
Yeah, so, I mean, I couldn't even imagine being hit by 9 IEDs or improvised explosive devices. And some of them, I know you took shrapnel, and you've had a long way to recovery to get where you are today. You know, tell me about that recovery. I mean,
sure.
All of these, to come back and get cancer, you know, thyroid cancer was that related to the burn pits? Was that related to some of your service? What do you think that was caused from?
Yeah, man. That was actually really clear cut, because I was constantly assessing my guy. Why I have those numbers, just to go back to the IEDs, and just for reference for VA purposes, and so the audience knows, if you fell 10 feet, lost consciousness at 5 feet, VA constitutes that as a traumatic brain injury. We sustained 32%, Bravo Company, 1st Platoon, 32% of the entire IEDs in theater at the regiment level. So that's why I have those numbers over the entire, deployment. But that was only from, I'd say, 3 or 4 months in. I did take shrapnel to the base of my neck. I would always check my guys. That was towards the end of the tour. I would always check my guys, PIP TMs, if they were, combat effective, whatnot. It was at a point where I'd noticed a bulging neck or a symptomatic thyroid if I saw one. But my guys, my Marines they were more, the issue. My role was to make sure that they were combat effective at all times. So, not seeing anything that was alarming, I had dealt with the injury to my neck. I ended up going to Walter Reed for a multitude of reasons when I got back. But at the end of 2006, I had gone in just because of tinnitus, ringing in the ears. Had orders to take a commissioning package through the MSD IPP program as a PA. And I came out of that with migraines, tinnitus, right? And they told me that I had thyroid cancer. Or at least they saw a softball-sized mass, asymptomatic, no genetic predisposition, so nothing in my family. They saw that on the MRI, and a couple weeks later, they did a fine needle aspiration where they just sucked some juice out of it, and they found it to be non-cancerous at that point. And then the commander pulled me aside. He goes, "Listen, man, what do you want to do?" And I said, based on my sex, the fact that I am the only one in my family, why don't we just take it out? And the cells that were aspirated, that were done without imagery, guided imagery, so basically so that they could see where they were going, they just happened to be non-cancerous cells. And so the thyroid in its entirety that was removed was cancerous, and they went immediately back in 3 or 4 days later and did the other lobe. So I do take Synthroid and calcium as a supplement. But I say that because it's important for all veterans to really be in charge of their health here, to know what the heck's going on, to make sure that it's just like, that doc or their medic looking out for them when they were in country or they were in service. That bond still exists, and that is the answer to the latter part of your question was what, my recovery consisted of, was a lot of pain and a lot of moving forward and 9 steps back and then taking a little shuffle forward because of that bond that I had with my Marines.
Yeah, I tell you what, there is no stronger bond than a Navy Corpsman and the Marines. You guys are the ones that take care of us when we're running through gunfire. You're running through gunfire with us to be there if something happens, and you're medevacing us out.
Check.
I mean, I've seen it firsthand, the heroism that our corpsmen go through to make sure that we get the care that we need when we're fighting in battle. And it's like no other. I mean, it's a brotherhood that very few get to experience, but the ones that do will never forget. And
well said.
Back in 2010, I believe, it was right around there, we met at a program down in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And I remember one of the team leaders down there, they were talking about you, John, and I said, man, I need to go talk to this guy because I had heard and learned about these programs that I've been using this podcast to get out to our veterans who have traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, anxiety, and many other disabilities. And so I kind of hunted you down, and I started telling you about the 22 project that was just on last week. And,
yep.
When you heard about that, what was your brain thought on this program?
You just brought me back because I remember where I was, bro. I can't remember what I had for dinner last week sometimes, but or what I did yesterday. But that stays in my mind. I remember you were like, Doc Sofronas. I'm like, yeah, dude. And Semper Fi Odyssey with General Jones. So yeah, I had tried everything for TBI. Like there was this. I don't know if you remember that what I call the seizure box. You'd look at it in these lenses, like you'd look at this virtual reality box. In amitriptyline, nortriptyline, prazosin, meds that you don't want to be on. And to date, bro, there's no cure for TBI. TBI is something that, we can talk about neuroplasticity, and the 22 Project really hones in on that, and having, thanks to you, marrying that up and having gone down there now myself for multiple sessions, it's a whole other world what you can do with hyperbaric oxygen, but not just HPOT. It's the camaraderie. It's the spiritual, the spiritual component. And spiritual being not necessarily God. If you don't feel that that's something that you associate with the word spiritual, me, I do. And and spiritual component was phenomenal. The love is the true cure. And getting into the actual treatment modality, basically, and I'm sure the 22 Project spoke to this, is, like Alex and Erica selflessly are coordinating the grants and the care. Ashley, the program manager, Dawn, Scotty, everybody that's on staff, they're phenomenal individuals. They have one thing in common. They don't give up. And they care about the people that they're seeing. So I had tried everything at that point just to be able to walk in a straight line or not turn around in a circle. And my daughter's like, Daddy fell again on the trampoline. The point is that I couldn't be the best dad I could. I couldn't do normal things. And that was my norm, right? So I actually had a stroke at one point where I lost the vision in my right eye for 15 mics, and they found 3 brain lesions and then spinal cord plaque. Alex and the whole staff, the way they took me in warranted what I did when I finished, and that was go to my congressman and write a letter saying that this needs to be a part of VA. I had worked within the Department of Veterans Affairs as a senior executive, and I said, look, do something right to help guys with TBI, veterans with TBI. And that was put in. I've never seen correspondence fly so quickly. And I think now it is a House bill. It's the 118th National TBI Treatment Act that I think it's 5 years that VA is going to be doing various studies to see if neuroplasticity is effective, hyperbaric oxygen is effective. I think what they will find is that 22 Project has the answers. They have the entire package within their program.
Now, that bill was introduced in May of 2023. So here we are in May of 2025, 2 years into it. We got 3 years more to go. So hopefully by 2028, the hyperbaric oxygen chamber treatment will be provided for the VA, for us veterans to be able to go to a VA and get that treatment. Because like I said on my earlier show, it did so much for me, and it was the least invasive treatment I've ever had, but it had the most success in the way my brain functioned and worked. And that leads me to my next question. What got you into being a VA specialist or a review officer? How did you go from the military to the VA?
Sure, dude. So to your point, first, you nailed it. It is one of the best. It is the best. Again, there is no treatment that I've seen, but it's marked and it's noticeable improvement. And I even mentioned it to my providers. So if you're a veteran and you're at the VA and you're a neurologist or you're polytrauma and you're talking to your doc, like mention hyperbaric oxygen, because this bill will get recognized there's nothing that Eric and I are gonna, monetarily gain from this. We want to see you get to where you're good to go. A caveat, kind of leading into where I became a veteran service representative, and then just for clarity, I never worked as a VSO by choice. A VSO such as DAV, and none of these are mentioned for any other reason than they are VSOs, veteran service organizations. VFW, I think Michigan. I'm in Florida now, but from Boston originally. So, we have in New Hampshire, there's where I live, New Hampshire Office of Veteran Services, Michigan Office of Veteran Services. Every state has a VSO. There's a list on VA.gov of accredited VSOs. And that's really what you need to pay attention to because of lawyers, sharks, claim sharks that will charge an astronomical amount of money and they won't generate. And the majority of them are paralegals.
Kind of hone in on that part right there. So I know it's a huge initiative by the VFW, these claim sharks. They're running ads on the TV. They're saying if you're a veteran and you're having problems getting your disabilities, please come to us. But what they're really doing is they're taking a percentage of all your back pay and what it takes for you to get your disability. They're not doing anything different than a veteran service organization. But what they are doing is if you go to a veteran service organization and you do it through your VSO, those guys will get you all of your money, where if you go to a lawyer, they're going to take a quarter to half of the money that you would get in the beginning. Am I wrong?
No, you're right on. And I mean, even if it's not in the beginning, they'll find a way to take it. And there's actual regulation. So I started out as a VSR, and I could see where they would come up in the federal building, DAV, VFW on various days. We have a system called VBMS, Burls, Share, all these other systems, Capri, Aspen. We're able to use that system as what we make our rating decisions on. See what veteran went to what VA. And ultimately, on your rating decision, you're going to see who your veteran service officer is, whether it's that person who's non-accredited, like Eric had mentioned, or if it's DAV or VFW. The sharks and the issue, the 38 CFR has and I'm going off memory, but this is exactly verbatim. It states that as it pertains to veterans affairs, compensation, anybody can go and assist another person. Like I have a nonprofit organization. I have a service that I provide where I validate organizations that claim that they're accredited. I found two that were anything but. And so the important aspect is that you know that in the 38 CFR, which again it governs what can be done in the United States Code, USC Code, 38 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, it states 19% of any retroactive, and this is the exact verbiage, but 19% of any retroactive award is deemed unreasonable. And then there's a subpart to that where it talks about 30 some odd percent of any monthly benefit is deemed unreasonable. And the term unreasonable is written in the documentation. So the best way to avoid that, ladies and gents, honestly, is go and find an accredited VSO online. Reach out to me directly. I'll be more than happy to assist. And select one using VA Form 21 TAC 22. That immediately gives that individual the right to represent you. And then there's a subsequent form where you can have people, such like nonprofit organizations or people that you trust, represent you. They can't sign your name, but they can represent you and get information on your claim if you fall in that category where you need that. But this is a very big issue. It's a very problematic issue where there are organizations that only have paralegals or that aren't a part of the Better Business Bureau or that are not accredited, and they're claiming on forums like YouTube or even on a professional legal commercial, they'll claim, you could be receiving $12,000 per month. Well, they don't go into what you need in order to rate that. They just talk about, we're going to get this for you, and then they end up having you sign a contract. So if you do have a lawyer and you're not feeling good about it, you can go to the VA, again, do a 2122, and immediately that lawyer is now severed. They are no longer your representation.
And if you do have a lawyer, I would definitely represent you doing that. Let's pause for a break right now. Let's hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with Navy Corpsman John Sofronas.
Running a small business is tough, but you don't have to do it alone. The Small Business Association of Michigan provides tools, connections, and advocacy to help you succeed. Join thousands of fellow entrepreneurs at sbam.org.
Welcome back to Warfighters United. We're talking to Navy Corpsman John Sofronas, and we were just talking about the sharks that try to go after our money for our disabled veterans here and across the nation. But why don't we fast forward a little bit? And you have quite this story. In 2006, you were talking about 2 grenades that got thrown into your vehicle. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I always believe that people are here for a reason, and things happen that should have went a different way. And I believe God puts us on this earth for a certain reason. John, how did 2 grenades get thrown into your vehicle?
Sure, man. We got to go back a little bit earlier. In 2005, I actually was fishing in Newport, and I got struck by lightning in my left palm. Abu Garcia reel, let alone the amount of IEDs that we were getting rocked with. Every individual who was out in country knows how they store their munitions. They're either in a mosque or they're in areas that we're not allowed to go into. In this case, there was another corpsman as well, and myself. We even joked about it. But nonetheless, in short, without having to go and dig it all up, there was we were in non-MRAP gun trucks. Highbacks troop transport was good to go. It was authorized until it wasn't. I remember 4 Marines had passed because a grenade was tossed in, and a highback. But I was in a gun truck, and it had bounced off the gunner, and Brooks was our staff sergeant, our platoon sergeant, and the grenade had fumbled it by the aid rod. No, it was the back seat. I was behind the aid rod. Yeah, so it was on Brooksy's side, and we all just responded. We couldn't open our window based on how the VICs were set up, so it didn't detonate. I mean, you have 3 to 5 seconds after the pin is removed and the thumb clip is milked. It didn't go off, man, and that's one aspect. Then you think about what your guides are talking about afterwards. I have a picture. I wish I could show you this bird that landed on the 50 before deployment that my platoon commander was going to ride in the same Vic as me. And we know from Vietnam what Doc's life expectancy is like 7 seconds. Of a human life expectancy is 3. So it's just something that you don't do. I remember some of those days hearing about true, like, warlords, like you talk about Fallujah in 04. Those guys was there for a very small period of time, but those guys really going through and pushing. I almost wish that 06 was like that because it was more consistent ROE. It was knowing that we're not getting rocked and like an IED gets put, a fake IED gets put on one route, let's say route Ethan, and then on route Fran, that's our only extract. That's the real IED. So our TTPs, were to set a cordon around the IED that was there. What we do so, and then our only extract route, and we end up getting rocked after all that, waiting for CEBs and EOD to come out and detonate it. I don't know. I can tell you that my trip back has involved a lot of me wanting to do what I deemed was right. I went through a dark period, as we all do. I lost 2 Marines on the same day, 16th of August, 06. And not to digress, but I was inserted at the time, and in the stock, I broke the insertion when I couldn't get a CAS rep, and I went down a 3-level stair, like spiral staircase, right off of Mount Fran, and they were dead instantaneously. I couldn't do anything, put a surgical airway in or address the issue because I couldn't get to him because 6 Marines tackled me right before the courtyard wall. And in 09, his mother, McKenna's mom, had said to me, Karen, she said, there was something, if those Marines had let you up, I know my son would be here today. And that set me down a dark path.
As it would anybody.
Yeah. But not being able to put a surgical airway in was all I was thinking. But those 6 Marines, and I'm not a big dude, but those guys, I hated for a long time. But the reality is those guys were saving my life. So they knew what was going on. They knew, despite having pop smoke and so forth, that was, platoon commander, he's a warrior, going to get Lance Corporal Glover. What platoon commander does that? And so for the rest of my life, I'll always honor Captain McKenna and Lance Corporal Glover and the others that we lost as well.
Well, John,
asking myself one question, really, how would they want me to live? And that was a big part of my treatment. How do they want me to live?
And I could totally agree with you. And I was just about to mention something like that. When my platoon sergeant got killed, and anytime when somebody out of your squad gets killed, and you get back to the United States and you start thinking about it, you have all that time to think about what happened. You have all the time in the world to, diffuse this, break down the situation that occurred. And it always leaves people down that dark path. But then when you realize it and you think, what would that guy want us to do? What would that Marine, what would that soldier, what would that airman, what would that Coast Guardie, what would they want you to do? Would they want you to dwell on that? Or would they want you to, fall down 7, get up 8, get back up on that horse and not only honor their sacrifice, but to spend your days, helping others, getting through those hard times or providing the resources that could ultimately change their lives or their families' lives. And that kind of leads me down to another issue that we had talked about right now is the PACT Act. You know,
Sure.
those the burn pits, the chemicals, everything that we encountered over in Iraq and Afghanistan. Can you kind of explain what the PACT Act is and why it is becoming such a huge issue?
Definitely. Public law 117, TAC 168. It was put in August 10th, 2022. And the law itself extending eligibility for veterans with any sort of toxic exposures. Burn pits is what we often think of. It doesn't just speak to our generation, the 2001 rather, to 2008. It goes way back. It actually adds 20 more presumptive conditions for Vietnam veterans, Korea War veterans that were along the DMZ. It talks about from a very fortunate standpoint, as it pertains to Gulf War veterans, anyone who had served in, we say, the first Gulf, but the legislation is very specific, on or after August 2nd, 1990, in Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, the UAE, and the airspace above any of those locations. It also speaks to anyone who served 9/11, 01, in Afghanistan, Djibouti, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Uzbekistan, Yemen, and again, the airspace above those locations. That the following illnesses are presumptive. And service connection, just so I can get it out there, if you've never filed a claim, don't worry, right? You won't know unless you do. That money is there. It's printed. I need you to know that 3.3-19, the principles of service, 3.309, the principles of service connection talk about 4 types of service connection: direct, presumptive, augurative, and secondary. But this is something that Vietnam veterans had to wait 40, 50 years for. And, I remember in 1994 learning that as a junior VSI about, prostate cancer becoming a presumptive condition. My goodness. And service connecting people way back to 94 in some cases. But the illnesses that are now presumptive per the PACT Act, environmental toxins, remember, burn pits, asthma, bronchitis, COPD, rhinitis, sinusitis, chronic bronchiolitis or constrictive or obliterative bronchiolitis, emphysema, granulomatosis disease, ILD, which is interstitial lung disease, pleuritis, pulmonary fibrosis, and sarcoidosis. There's also cancers as well of the brain, GI, glioblastoma, head cancer of any type, kidney cancer, lymphoma of any type, melanoma, neck cancer, pancreatic cancer, reproductive cancer, and respiratory. And I'd recommend, if you're a veteran, going in and asking to be put on a Vietnam or Agent Orange registry, the burn pit registry at the VA. And if you want to do it out in the community, there's VA community care.
Wow. I don't know how you remember all that, John, but that's way above my pay grade.
Full disclosure, so I did remember all the illnesses, the cancers I had to pull on the phone. But I will tell you, of the cancers that I've seen, the most common is glioblastoma, guys. I'm telling you. Glioblastoma has been one that I see more and more and more. And COPD, more and more and more. And just so you know, from Agent Orange, you could have a guy in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is outside the area of operation, and that individual could have been air crew, or could have been a pilot running missions over, Vietnam and the airspace. One of the most important things here is the PACT Act incorporates the airspace and the waterways above and or around the area of operation. And why that's important is because if you were an air crewman and a Vietnam veteran and or a pilot and you're running missions, you're actively cleaning off Agent Orange. You're in the cockpit running missions over Vietnam. If you look at 38 CFR 3.309, it will talk about, it lists every condition that's recognized. And as I mentioned, the burn pits and the PACT Act, it expands 20 new conditions for Vietnam veterans, but it is expanded also to everyone, the airspace above those locations.
Now, moving forward from the PACT Act, I kind of wanted to talk about TSGLI benefits for a moment. TSGLI benefits, which is loss of limbs, and now after it was amended in 2012, was they added salvage limbs. And so from 2001 to 2012, when they amended those benefits, you have 11 years of warfighters out there that have been seriously injured. They've lost limbs. And then when they amended it, they allowed salvage limbs to be part of it. But you were kind of telling me earlier that it wasn't only salvage limbs, it was eyesight. It was a lot of different things. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Definitely, yeah. And that's my service dog, Carmen, sounding off. So there are two things to really focus on as we talk about what Eric referenced. TSGLI in itself, we think of, traumatic service members group life insurance. And, there's caveats to all of this, but one of the stories that he was telling me, where he had to get Congress involved, it's really frustrating to understand, but also I don't want to take away from special monthly compensation and how VA does their recognition, either amputees, quadriplegics, tetraplegic, burns are incorporated, sight, loss of hearing. These amendments are enormous. And if you're a veteran that had served at one point and you received a stipend or you received any monetary amount of money for any sort of what I'm about to mention, please go back in and see if there's something that either VA can help guide you on. When I say VA, Veterans Benefits Administration. And if you have any questions, look at the community care list of approved or accredited prosthetic providers. Like Mobius is outstanding if you are an amputee. But the answer, Eric, sight, total and permanent loss of sight, or loss of sight that has lasted 120 days. For each eye, up to $50,000 for each eye. Total and permanent loss of hearing for one ear is $25,000, both ears $100,000. Speech, aphonia, total and permanent loss of speech is $50,000. Now we talk about quadriplegia, a loss of use, complete paralysis. So anatomical loss or complete paralysis of all four limbs, $100,000. Hemiplegia or complete paralysis of the upper and lower limbs on one side of the body, $100,000. Now, that's $100,000, and you saw how that was broken down. It's complete paralysis of the upper and lower limbs on one side of the body. So we're talking about the left arm and the left leg. Special monthly compensation is an extraordinary award that VA will offer if you meet certain criteria, such as anatomical loss below or above the knee, below or above the elbow, and VA will grant additional monies per month. And again, the money that I'm referencing is often called compensation.
So is that the combat-related stress compensation, or is that something different?
No, but it's kind of in the same boat. It's CRSC. So in order to, again, it would be really helpful to dive into this where we have several sessions, but what I'll try to do is just glance over it.
Uh-huh.
A lot of veterans that are retired from the military from like 2007, 8 to 2012, there was actually a piece of correspondence that came from DOD that said if you were retired from this date to this date, to resubmit your inquiry for a higher percentage because of the way that they were handled during that time. So nonetheless, it's very similar to look at the salvaged limbs and the amendments that have been made to TSGLI. As it pertains to CRSD, if you retired from any branch of service, you are entitled, and you served in received hazardous duty pay. On your rating decision, it will say peacetime era. It will say you served in a combat during a combat period. It may be specific enough to say you served in support of Iraqi freedom or whatnot. If you have a service-connected condition and it has on the rating sheet combat incurred versus peacetime, then you are entitled, if you have 20 years of service, and you have to have 20 years, not, like 8, and then you're retired. You are entitled to an additional amount of money from DOD. So how that works is combat-related special compensation, CRSC. You get your rating decision, and you can take that rating decision. You're encouraged to do so. You find the location, whether it be Department of the Navy, Marine Corps, would be Department of the Navy, Department of the Army, and then you send that in along with the application for CRSC, and then there you have your additional monthly stipend. And then that is indefinite if you're permanent in total. Equally, CRDP is if you're retired and it's any length of time, you can receive, if you're 100% permanent in total, then you can receive both your retired pay and your VA compensation. So there are so many things that I had learned in the 11 years that I had worked within VA. We're talking really about presumptive service connection, special monthly compensation, which is about a 2-year program to grasp. But these exist. And veterans, like, this is what so many that went before us or you fought for and felt like they didn't warrant anything. And I know for Eric and I, we were talking earlier, and I said, bro, I worked at VA for this long, and I didn't even know that I could file for this one thing. Because we don't care. We don't go looking for it because we're humble. And that's the foundation of integrity. But on a global level, that's why we're doing this. That's why Eric's doing this, to raise awareness for everybody to go and reach out understand why it is that you're, receiving the treatment that you are, and are you receiving proper professional guidance?
Yeah, I tell you what, just getting that proper professional guidance makes a huge difference in not only getting your compensation, but getting your disabilities approved by the VA and being able to move forward in life. It used to take 3-4 years to get your disability. I think the VA has it down to 3 to 6 months now, which is just crazy to me because when I got out in 2006, I didn't actually get my first rating till 2010. And so we've really come a long way, but we can always do a little bit better. So what do you have going on now? I know you're about to launch one of your a nonprofit here soon. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, just I wanted to just speak to, if you get a decision, like that 4-year period, if you get a decision, and mind you, I mean, there's a lot of errors that are in these rating decisions because personnel, VAs are understaffed. So if you rating decision, the VA is mandated to tell you why they denied the rating decision. A lot of people don't pay attention to that, though. And so I would advise against filing an appeal because appeals, there's a place for them, but they take a long time. Instead, I would submit a request for reconsideration, and all VA is looking for is evidence that was not previously reviewed in that rating decision. If you have new and material evidence or evidence that was not previously looked at, maybe they didn't obtain it from the correct location. It could have been an error completely. Resubmit it. Don't get discouraged. I have been a Verizon spokesman for their Valor program. I have gratuitously just volunteered. I've also I met, thanks to you, Mark Pike, and him and I had started DVUF, Disabled Veteran United Foundation, where in 2 years we saw 6,219 veterans for free, 98% of whom are permanent in total. And I don't know how to charge a veteran for something that's just dwindling in my head because I know how hard it was to reach out. What I'll be launching most likely in October is a Corpsman's Compass, a True North project. And what I did is I took eight of the main programs that VA doesn't have, and I went and I inquired, what do you need? And I went around from Florida all the way up the East Coast, and I said, well, what do you need? What do you want to see? And we have service dog programs. We have spiritual programs. We have a list of trusted resources. We offer this service where not acting as a VSO, but giving guidance. Art therapy called The Art of Connection. I have two of the most amazing case managers that left paying jobs because they saw the amount of work that we were doing to start their own program. We have a burial, and probably this is one of the most important aspects. We have a burial benefit program. If you're a veteran and you pass, God forbid, does your wife know? Do your children know what to do? So VA doesn't have a program right now. There's burial benefits, but there's no program to educate families. Do you have a will submitted? We make sure that there is no question if that were to be, a situation. And that was inspired by the Stephan Foundation, Sarah Stephan, who lost her husband to suicide. And I am tired of losing veterans to suicide. And something needs to be done. And so this is a start. The Stephan Foundation. We also have ancillary programs. One of the main, these are all ancillary, if you will, because they're secondary to VA, if VA does not offer. But what you had led with, Eric, we have a vetting process where we go through and we see, is this person accredited that you're currently with? If so, so be it. If not, let's change it up. Let's mix it up. Adaptive sports, OT, PT, and we can also recommend providers that are VA community care credentialed. Having all that in one place helps a veteran who's either just getting out or someone who's been out for years. And then the last piece, we have TAPS briefs that we're going to be attending because we've all been. We know sometimes they're pretty dismal. One of the focal points is to establish a podcast, letting people know we're going to be in this area or this region, and whether you qualify for a BDD claim, a benefit delivery of discharge, if you're active duty, that's like 6 to 18 months from discharge, or you've been out for 50 years. It doesn't matter. We're going to give you guidance. We're going to arrange forums. We need to establish sponsors, obviously, but arrange forums so that this word can get out there so that people go. And then every state has an advisory committee, and I'm a member of the New Hampshire Advisory Board for Veterans, and that's a good way to get it out there too. So a Corpsman Compass is really supposed to be what VA doesn't offer or what people have told me of that number of individuals. I need this.
Well, I tell you what, John, you're amazing. The work you're doing is astronomical to our veterans across the nation. And when you come out with those, I'm definitely going to be putting it on Warfighters United. I want to thank you for coming in today and being a part of Warfighters United and speaking about some of these claims, the disabilities, and giving this information that is vital for our guys that are out there who maybe haven't applied and are thinking about it, or the people that have and don't know about some of the things that they've added on over the last decade or two. And so, John, thank you very much for coming on Warfighters United. You know, tune in next week. We're going to have Gunnery Sergeant Nick Popadich. He's a tanker by trait, but he was known as the Cigar Marine. He's probably one of the most iconic Marines out of the Iraq era, and he will be here. I know, John, you've got to meet him down at Focus. He is probably one of the most inspiring, motivational speakers and Marines that I've ever met.
Yeah, you can't get a better individual. And Eric, I'll tell you that he's a big part of the connection that you bring too, man. Don't ever think that you're not making that difference up in Michigan, brother. I'm telling you, really cool, an opportunity to be able to come out. And please let me know if you want to do this again.
Oh, I definitely would like to have you on in a little while again, because there's things that are always changing, and the more we stay up on it, the better our veterans will be. So stay tuned for next week, Warfighters United. You can find us on Facebook, Warfighters United Podcast. And if you have any questions or you want to email me, you can do warfightersunitedpodcast@gmail.com.